listen, I get it. You're struggling in choosing the verb essere over avere in passato prossimo. But no worries. Today, I'm here to help you to understand when to use essere and when to use avere with passato prossimo. Ciao a tutti, io sono Stefano and I am an Italian teacher. If you're new to the channel, benvenuta or benvenuto, and I make Italian educational content here on YouTube. If you don't want to miss any of my future Italian lessons, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. But now it's time to dive into today's topic. Essere or avere? Before we start talking about the right choice of the verb, let's just revise very quickly how to form passato prossimo and what passato prossimo actually is. Passato prossimo is an Italian tense used to talk about an action that took place in the past. Usually passato prossimo is used when the action is very defined and is started and finished in the past. Passato prossimo is formed this way: subject, or the person doing the action, plus the helping verb in the present, essere or avere, plus the past participle of the verb. But now let's talk about the core topic of this video. Is it essere or avere? When I started teaching 5 years ago, I found this extremely frustrating because it was very hard to explain to my students. But then I found this amazing picture on one of my books that I actually recommend to you. It's called Nuovo Contatto a Uno. I use it with my students and it's very good to practice your Italian if you are a beginner. I will leave the link to the book in the description below. But anyway, I found on this book this beautiful picture that explains when to use avere and when to use essere. Well, actually it's about when to use essere, and this picture is called the house of essere. The reason why we're going to focus on when to use essere is because the majority of verbs in Italian take avere, so it's actually much better to focus on the verbs that take essere. So if you don't have a verb in those categories, in the categories of verb taking essere, you know that you have to use avere. So let me just show the picture real quick. Here you see a lot of verbs and a lot of things going on in this picture. We're going to break down this picture and talk about all the categories of verbs that actually take essere. So again, if you have a verb that doesn't fall in any of these categories, you will probably need to use avere. Let's start from the first category: verbs suggesting motion. Usually, verbs suggesting motion, verbs that involve a kind of movement, take essere. Let me give you a comprehensive list of verbs taking essere that suggest motion. The first one, of course, is andare, to go. So we would say sono andato, I went. Now you would say sono andato if you're a man, sono andata if you're a woman. I'm going to give you the masculine forms of the past participle just to make the video a little bit quicker, but just be aware that since we're using essere, you need to change the past participle according to the gender and number of the subject. So let's continue with the list. Then we have venire, sono venuto, I came. Salire, sono salito, I went up. Scendere, sono sceso, I went down. Cadere, sono caduto, I fell. Partire, sono partito, I left. Entrare, sono entrato, I went in, I entered. Uscire, sono uscito, I went out, I exited. Ritornare or tornare, they are the same thing. So, sono ritornato or sono tornato, I came back or I returned. Arrivare, sono arrivato, I arrived. Let me give you a couple of useful sentences with these verbs. Sono andato a fare shopping con mia sorella. I went shopping with my sister. Sono ritornati a casa alle 2. They came back at home at 2. Sono arrivata in ritardo a lavoro. I arrived late at work. Now let's talk about the second category: verbs suggesting no motion. Now, this is honestly so funny because the first category is literally verbs expressing motion and the second one is verbs suggesting no motion. But this is the way it works. So if you have a verb that gives you the idea of you staying still, then you're going to use essere in passato prossimo. Mainly, we have three verbs: stare, rimanere, e restare. Stare, we would say sono stato, I stayed. Rimanere, sono rimasto. It's an irregular past participle. Sono rimasto. I stayed or I remained. Restare, sono restato. Again, I stayed, I remained. They are pretty much synonyms and they kind of mean the same thing, but they are very, very common and we use them all the time. Let me give you some examples with these verbs. Sono rimasta a casa ieri sera perché ero stanca. I stayed at home last night because I was tired. Siete mai stati in Italia? Siete mai stati in Italia? Have you ever been to Italy? Have you guys ever been to Italy? Just one quick little note. Here I'm using the verb sono stato in the sense of essere. This is because sono stato means both I stayed and I have been or I was. Don't forget that the passato prossimo of essere and stare is actually the same, but more on this later. And now let's go to category number 3. Verbs suggesting a change of state. So if you have a verb that kind of involves the idea of something changing and developing, then you're going to use essere. We mainly have 4 verbs in this category: crescere, diventare, nascere, morire. So crescere, we would say sono cresciuto, I grew up. Diventare, sono diventato, I became. Nascere, sono nato, I was born. And then the last one, morire, sono morto, I died. For example, I could say something like sono nato e cresciuto in Italia. I was born and raised in Italy. Now let's move on to the 4th category of today, reflexive verbs. Now, you can get this one wrong because all reflexive verbs take essere, no exception. So if you have a reflexive verb, you're going to use essere right away. You don't have to think about it. I don't know if you've watched my first vlog. In those videos, I speak 100% in Italian. So let's take a look at one clip so that you can see how reflexive verbs are used in the past. Oh, mi sento un uomo nuovo. Mi sono fatto la doccia, mi sono vestito e adesso sono pronto per iniziare la giornata. Mi sono fatto la doccia, mi sono vestito, mi sono fatto la doccia, mi sono vestito. Alright, so I said mi sono fatto la doccia from the verb farsi, la doccia, to shower, and then mi sono vestito, I got dressed. So all reflexive verbs, all of them take essere. And now, last category of today. And actually, this category just has one verb, essere. Yes, the helping verb of essere is essere itself. Now, just remember that the past participle of essere is irregular, and it's stato. So as you can see, the passato prossimo of the verb stare and essere is actually the same, because the passato prossimo of stare is sono stato, and so is the passato prossimo of essere. For this reason, sono stato might mean 3 things: I was, I have been, and I stayed. Of course, you can understand the meaning and the translation in English based on the context. Alright, so if you have a verb that doesn't fall in any of these categories, you're just going to use avere. Of course, there are also other verbs that take essere, and we might talk about them in the future. At the same time, these are not actual rules, but more of tips, because the rules behind the choice of essere or avere are related to the idea of transitive and intransitive verbs. Now that's just a little bit more complicated, and I'd rather not to talk about it in this video. But if you're interested, maybe I might make a video on this in the future. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, because this is gonna support my work and my channel. And also, if you don't want to miss any future lessons, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I do my best to post 2 videos a week. One in English, where I go over grammar, and one in Italian, a vlog, where I just show you my daily life and I speak in Italian 100%. I also have an Instagram page called Teacher Stefano, where I usually upload stories speaking in Italian, so if you would like to practice your listening skills, you can go follow me there as well. I think we're done, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Ci vediamo nel prossimo video. Un abbraccio. Ciao ciao!